Welcome, dear listeners, to the Dish with Dina podcast. I'm so happy to have you join us again today. My guest is Maurice Whyte. Maurice and I dish about what it means to live an authentic life, honoring your health and wellness journey, and spreading positivity and support across our online platforms. So sit back, enjoy the conversation, and let's dish. Good morning, Maurice Whyte, and welcome to the Dish with Dina podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm very well. I always like to joke that we are in the middle of a pandemic, so my okay is probably a little bit different now than it was, 6 months ago, but we're adjusting. You have such an amazing story to share, and I'm very honored to let you have this platform in which to share it. I also like learning about people's backgrounds, cultural upbringings, food and family histories, and so on. But before we go that far back, you and I have known each other for a while, not too far back there, but do you remember and can you share the story of how we first met?
Yeah, so I remember I was in the Apex working out, and that's at Lehman College where we met. Mm-hmm. And you had two friends of yours, and you were doing something. It was on the upstairs track, actually. Yes.
Yeah.
Upstairs track. And you were doing an ab exercise. Now I remember. You were doing an ab exercise. And I was looking, and I think it's really uncomfortable for people when somebody just stares at you and not saying anything. So I came over and I formally introduced myself, and I said, "Is it okay if I help you guys?" And you said, "Okay, sure. Ready to learn." So, I basically helped you to what the exercise worked and what are the things you can do. And from being practically schoolmates, friends, we went to being Instagram friends. So that's what kicked it off.
Yes, I was very appreciative. As usual, I'm usually not very comfortable when I'm exercising anyway, so I'm sure I was very grateful for your help at the time. And I also loved, and I always say there's no such thing as coincidence, because you and I, while we were on Lehman campus at the same time and in the Apex Center that day, we didn't really cross paths again after that, as far as I can remember. So it was nice. We have the luxury of both having the in-person meeting and then kind of being each other's fans on Instagram, because I've been following you for quite some time and I really I love your content. So let's go back a little bit further first before we launch into the current version of who you are. And will you share with us some of your earliest food memories, maybe some of your upbringing, where you grew up and that sort of thing?
So I was born and raised in Kingston, Jamaica, spent a lot of time in the countryside, and being a city boy, it's not my kind of a life because of the noise and all that stuff around me. So I spend most of my time in the countryside where there's fruits, there's trees, there's nature, there's animals, there's that dew in the morning. That's what I really love. Every summer, every holiday, if it's even 2-3 days, I would be in the countryside. It was like about an hour and a half drive from where we lived in the city. I was raised by my mom and my stepdad. Lived with them for practically all my life until I was about 3, until this current time. So I really had a different experience with that in terms of whether it be food, whether it be family orientation. It's just a whole different experience for me altogether. And a lot of that has shaped who I am today in terms of, knowing for yourself and doing for yourself, because I felt like it was on me to take care of me because my father wasn't around. But I was grateful for what I learned. I was grateful for what I was being given. And I was just grateful for being able to go to the countryside every now and then. That was the greatest part of me, because that really helped me to be me.
So you had that connection with nature there. In your home environment in the city. Did you have, because I know I share a lot about my upbringing too. We had a very large Italian family. We were very connected. There were almost sometimes too many people in my house on any given day. Mostly on Sundays, we would always have the weekly pasta dinners that would start about 2:00 in the afternoon and just go on and on until we were so stuffed we would fall asleep in front of the television. Did you have any of those traditional gatherings or different kinds of meals that you would set up that would be kind of special in that way for you?
I'm just sitting here laughing silently because in Jamaica you dare not miss a Sunday dinner, because Sunday dinner is the dinner. And for most Jamaicans, it's usually rice and peas, preferably kidney beans, or in Jamaica we call it gungo peas. I'm trying to remember what's the other name for it, but it's pigeon peas. Yes.
Pigeon peas, yeah.
So that's a typical Jamaican thing, and you make that with any form of meat you want to add, which was I was not a fan of meat at all ever since I was young. And you'll have to have a salad, and for us salad is either coleslaw or some tomatoes and lettuce on your plate. And that would be my go-to. Never liked tomatoes, but I used to destroy some lettuce. Oh my Lord. So my dinner would be rice and peas with lettuce, some ketchup, and a glass of water. So that was me. And falling asleep in front of the TV, that's usually on a Saturday night. Friday night, Saturday night, yes.
So you had that large gathering as well?
Oh, wow.
People, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. People come over after church, because I was also raised in Pentecostal church. So, I was across the street from church, of course. My house is the easiest house to get to. People come over and, it's a lot of people there, but it's a lot of people that made a house feel like a home.
Yeah. Oh, that's so lovely. And I like to also ask, I mean, sometimes right now this seems kind of a weird thing to engage in when we talk about gender roles. But I know for us as Italian family, it was always the women in the kitchen. We were always the ones cooking and doing all that stuff. And then the men of the family would just be hanging out and waiting for the food to come. And so the reason why I want to bring that up is because with anyone that I'm interviewing, did you have hands-on experience in the kitchen? Were you able to cook? Were you able to, get your hands dirty in that way and really experience the flavors and the ingredients and know how to put things together? Or how did that role work for you when you were younger?
Well, for me, it was somewhat of a, as you said, gender roles, but I was forcefully deviated from that because my mom, when I told her at about 13 or 14, I said, Mom, I cannot eat meat anymore. It makes me sick. Right. I really can't eat it. She said, well, in the Jamaican terminology, you better learn to cook. So it's basically telling me you're your own chef now. So I started buying canned mixed vegetables from the corner stores and cooking that with barbecue sauce or some tomatoes and stuff like that. And that would be my dinner because I refuse to eat meat. I rather eat junk food, bun and cheese and all that than to eat meat. So for me, I always wanted to get involved in helping in the kitchen. And as I said, I had to basically teach myself. And part of teaching myself from then helped me to be the man I am today. Because the environment I was raised in, women in the kitchen, men sinners hang around, watch soccer or football. As you know, for our culture, it's football. And, that's just it. And as kids, you go outside and play until the food is ready. So I didn't want to be that kind of a person. I wanted to help my mom because she had 3 of us and I was the oldest. And I felt like it was my duty to help her. But she would tell me, get out of the kitchen. I'll cook. You go outside and I'll let you know when the food is ready. But then I come in and it's not what I wanted to eat. So I felt like it was my duty as a man to step into that responsibility of preparing for people, preparing for yourself. So that way you have the options. You create the options you want to have.
I'm so glad I asked that then, because it was almost like out of necessity for your own self. Otherwise, you would be not eating at all or eating things that you were not in love with. And you created that experience for yourself out of necessity, kind of doing that too. So that's very, very cool. Do you have certain flavors and go-to meals, which I'm sure we'll also talk about a little bit, in the later discussion coming up. But at the time, did you have, other than the canned veggies and the barbecue sauce, did you have anything else that you would go to or things that you were learning to kind of play with as far as flavors and textures and things like that?
Yes. For me, it was either it's curried or it's barbecued.
Okay.
And that's even to this day as a grown man, is either it's curried or it's barbecued. Okay. And I just love stuff that holds on to flavor. Yeah. So even with vegetables, I would love, I never had broccoli when I was growing up in Jamaica. Most of what I had was like lettuce, cabbage, spinach, which is actually something in Jamaica we call callaloo. So those were always my go-to things. And okra, I would eat that either raw or just barbecue that, or again, curry that. So I love things that really stuck with me in terms of flavor. I don't want to taste it and then I'm like, well, that didn't really hit. But barbecue sauce tends to hit you with a sweet, tangy flavor. Yeah. And then curry hits you with that substance. So I loved things like that. So with the vegetables, it was always vegetables. always. I never knew much of processed like tofu or veggie chunks. Never knew much of that. It was always that. My mom would tend to give me fish, and I would sit there. The fish get cold, and she would just have to eat it. I'm not touching it because I just didn't feel like it's gonna stay in my system.
Yeah. That's funny. So you again, you were kind of like finding new ways to find flavors that you enjoyed and sticking to things that you know, which is in your case, those I can actually like picture and smell and taste right now, even though I'm not in the kitchen. I can picture like that, those smoky, pungent aromas. And again, like you said, the barbecue flavors too, kind of that sweet and spicy feel as well, that all of those natural foods that you were cooking really probably caught on to and just brought it up a notch in that way.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. So this is also why, so for people who are not in love with vegetables, which again, I don't understand that because I like you, I love vegetables, but for people who don't necessarily like them, it could be, no offense to whoever made it back in the day, but it could be related to how they grew up and the styles in which they were given veggies to begin with. If it was very bland, if it was, steamed beyond or boiled beyond recognition. And there's so much more to the levels and the profiles of the flavors of vegetables in their natural state. And then depending on if you're using water or oil or mixing spices in or roasting them, so I always try to tell people, pick something and just try to be creative with it or look up a recipe and try it different ways, because one version in its raw sense might not be as good as something in its roasted sense. And so, you might have to try a couple of different things before you really latch onto something you love.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense because even as a vegan myself, I'm not a big fan of eating celery, but I try other ways of ingesting it. Because it possibly sounds weird being a vegan and not liking a particular vegetable or fruit. So you have to find ways of getting it because it has its positives, it has its greatness. So as you said, if it's not good to you steamed, then you try boiling it, and also goes back, is it into the preparation, whether it was hurried done because there's a lot of people to feed, or it was grandma saying, okay, you need it, I'm gonna put some love in it, and that's all you wanted to eat, grandma's vegetable.
Right. With an extra serving of love. I love that. So I give you a lot of credit. I don't like broccoli and I don't like cauliflower, and everybody's like, right now we're in this whole big, everything's got cauliflower in it and we're using cauliflower as rice or as pasta or as the base of a pizza. And I just do not like cauliflower and broccoli. And so I refuse to eat it. So I give you a lot of credit that you'll at least try celery, knowing that you're not a fan, that you'll make it work in some way. So Maurice, can we now kind of venture into how some of those food behaviors, knowing that you were not a fan of animal products back then, how that kind of set you on the path of, the older version of you, whether it's high school years or younger adult years. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
So as I said, I have about age 12, my mom took me to the doctor complaining about me having severe headaches. And, long story short, the doctor said, well, ma'am, with all due respect, this young man cannot digest meat. And she said, well, I cook it. He's got to eat it because I can't cook 2 pots. So the doctor said, well, something has to be done. I couldn't even drink orange juice because back then it's just sugar, water, and a little bit of orange juice. And I said to her, well, I could learn to start cooking. And I made my first meal. I made boiled dumplings with tinned mackerel. I ate the dumplings, couldn't digest the mackerel. That was the confirmation. So I was already in high school by age 10. Yeah, I'm in Jamaica, you go to high school between age 10 to 13. I was just one of those whiz kids that made it to high school at age 10. So during high school, I joined the track team around 8th grade, really good athlete. But then, people kept saying, what do you eat and what not? And I see the guys at school eat chicken. And I was like, it looks good, it smells good, but I can't eat it. Yeah. So again, I resort to the bun and cheese and water. We weren't allowed to drink orange juice or Gatorade because, it didn't seem good for us as athletes in my high school. So again, the chef in me kept evolving because I was forced to cook for myself. So during the high school, it became more of a thing to not wanting to eat meat because I've always seen people fall asleep in class, and I would say that's because of what they're eating, not knowing it. It's just me saying okay, that's what it looks like and that's what you eat. And I came from, my parents in St. Thomas in the countryside came from a long line of Rastafari. So it's predominantly vegans and vegetarians. So I think that was a part of, once I knew that, I started thinking more, okay, this makes more sense. And I remember at around 16, I said to my mom, now it makes sense as to why I don't like it, because grandpa and my uncles, they don't eat it.
Right.
You know, and it turns out also, I found out since I have my daughter on the way, and I found out that I spoke to my mom about it, and she said one of the reasons I'm like this now is because when she was pregnant, she could not stand the smell of meat, much less the taste. So she created a vegan and didn't even know it.
You have one on the way.
Yeah.
So that's really cool, because it's almost like you're honoring that genetic predisposition through your familial lineage that was based in the plant-based foods and the vegetarian veganism back then too. So it's almost like it maybe jumped over your mom in a way, but then it caught up to you. And this is something that I often say too, not just to my patients, clients, and my colleagues, that when we talk about stuff is, yes, we want people to get a well-rounded amount of food and make sure they're getting a little bit of everything and not necessarily, quote unquote, restrict themselves from anything. But you also have to really pay attention and honor your body. If you're noticing, and in your case, you were able to go to the doctor and kind of get some confirmation, but if you're noticing you don't do well with certain foods, or you have digestive issues, or you feel like you kind of noticed with your classmates, you feel maybe sluggish for certain things, or that's at least how that makes you feel, sometimes it's okay to try to experiment a little bit and see what works for you. Obviously, if the case is that you become deficient in something, then that would be an issue where you'd have to either supplement or try to find an alternate way to get that missing, nutrient in your diet if you are foregoing something completely. I mean, if you're taking out meat, you can still get protein in other things. You just might not be getting the full, amino acid complementary proteins, but you can find a way to make all those things kind of work in that way. So that also, I wanted to find out too, as far as kind of being an athlete. And, a lot of times people think, oh, vegans, they can't, move around very much or something. They're all very tiny and frail, and, they're not eating enough meat, and that's what gives them the power in that way. But you have really made a career for yourself in being a vegan athlete. So can you tell us how that works for your performance and your recovery and what you're doing right now as far as, training and your own pursuits in that way?
One of the main rules or guidelines, for so to speak, to my philosophy of being an athlete is knowing your body and understanding how it works.
Overstanding.
So, yes, for me, being vegan, that's me. Now, for somebody who was raised consistently on, eating meat and still performing at their highest, I would not just rush them into becoming vegan because of its, insurmountable health benefits. I'm not that kind of person, because you have to understand how your body works and know what works for you. I would love for the whole world to go vegan, but know your body first. So for me, I had pretty much a very injured high school, collegiate athletic career, from dislocated shoulders, broken wrist, torn hip flexor, you name it. And part of me recovering so fast, and I didn't understand it. Case in point, took out my appendix 2004. Doctor said, well, you have to take a year off to get ready. I was back on the track in 5 months.
Right.
Didn't understand how my body was recovering so fast. Fast forward, torn hip flexor. I was supposed to be out for 2 years. I was on crutches for a month, for 2 months, wheelchair for a month, because I couldn't put any pressure on my leg at all. They told me, you know what, 2 years, you should be good. I was back playing collegiate soccer for Lehman College 4 months later, because there's something about my body was recovering, and I didn't understand it either. Then we go to 2016, got diagnosed with leukemia. They gave me 9 months to live. Beat cancer in 8 months. And they tell me, take your time, you have to get better. I was back in the gym in about June or July 2017. So when you look at it, the food has your medicine, so it's just about how you ingest it. And for me, it's been since I was 13, 14, avoiding anything animal-based, animal byproduct-based. I think that worked well in how my body recovers. The tissues, that I said, I'm no expert on how
The
the science of
chemistry,
quick
right, right.
recovery and all that, but what I feel in my body, I've heard other athletes spoke differently of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll ask, what is it that you eat? And then they'll tell you, oh, I love meat, bro. I got to get my protein. So as athletes, you have to be careful to not become carbivores or protein bingers. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things I learned to understand about how the body works. You put too much of one thing in there, it's going to cause complications. So as an athlete, it was necessary for me to know even the basics of nutrition
Mm-hmm.
to gain in, optimal performance and optimal nutrition from these food groups, superfoods, um, macronutrients and so forth. So with me, it's more of training is always easy, but it's more of knowing what to put in your body when, whether it's pre-training or post-training. And, I've trained during college, as I said, multiple injuries, but I never understood what nutrition was. The basics of it, I knew nothing. I was a nutrition dummy, if you want to ask. So now, as I'm getting more into that, after I graduated Lehman,
Mm.
I've been able to train with the same intensity, but no injuries so far. And I knock on wood on that one.
Indeed, I'm knocking on wood too. I'm listening, I'm scribbling as I usually do. I'm listening and I'm scribbling and taking notes as you're speaking. So you had quite a lot placed on you as far as physical injuries, the cancer diagnosis, and understanding who you were, finding that balance. But also, would you agree that the mind body connection is quite strong there too? Because there are quite a lot of people who could go under have the same issues occur and just kind of be defeated in that way, and maybe give up or be very depressed over something. How were you able to find that motivation to kind of push through and allow yourself to get that goal back in place without re-injuring yourself in some way, without making things worse for yourself? Aside from the food, did you have a support system around yourself? Were you able to kind of inspire your own self by visualizing things? Tell us a little bit about how that worked for you to find that motivation.
So one of the things I've always told people is the difference between the three divisions of college. And when you're at a Division III school competing, you're most of the times recovery, you're on your own. And that's because the magnitude of, you know, pressure and the athletes that they have to work with, you tend to try to be your own therapist, trainer, and work on your own recovery. So for me, I've always been the person with a positive mindset. It doesn't matter. I was telling my queen the other day, I could literally see fire, touch it, and feel like it's purging something within me. So the mindset to not feel fear, even though you're standing in something that seems dominant over you,
Right.
that's always been me. Broken wrist in high school, both of them, and people say, oh man, he's not gonna come back as the same athlete. I did come back as the same athlete. When I got diagnosed with cancer, a lot of people thought I was gonna die, and may their souls rest in peace. I've seen a lot died during the time that I was
Right.
going through chemotherapy. But my mindset is just something in me. As I said, growing up, I thought that I was my only support. So I had to make sure
Yeah.
that I found that intrinsic motivation to not give up on anything that I feel like is mine. And I felt like being an athlete, achieving certain things, still being alive, living, that was always my mindset. And growing up, in a Christian community,
Mm-hmm.
prayers and meditations were also a big thing. And as I become more of Maurice, unfolding those things, peeling off those things society attached to me and becoming my own self,
Yeah.
meditation became a very, very big help to who I am. Because physically, I was good, but mentally, I needed to be better. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what pulled me through with all these things. So you're perfectly right. And not for nothing, since having this union with my queen Amber,
Mm-hmm.
I've learned how your foods aid in your spiritual and mental state of mind. So that also has been a huge help in harnessing that much support. And yes, I had a support system. I've always had. And to me, I tell people that's always been my luxury. I've always had people who care. For some people say, oh, nobody cared. I cannot say that. I'm really grateful to the universe that I've always had people who cared. So
That's
that was also a big thing for me. And they're still here around,
yeah.
motivating me, telling me keep going and stuff like that.
Oh, Maurice, I love that, because you're right. It's not just about strengthening and recovering and maybe doing, physical therapy or whatever it is you need to get back literally on your feet. But it's about strengthening your mindset about things to be able to push through to the next level or to continue on your path, your journey, and then want to advance. And I think that's something that you and I have in common too, that we're not usually stagnant. Like, we like to constantly be doing something and moving forward into something bigger and better and developing our careers and our personal and professional selves. And so that actually brings me to my next question too, about what are you currently working on? So tell us kind of like what a current day in the life of you is, because you have a lot of stuff that I can see on social media. How is that playing a role in what you're doing right now, whatever your pursuits are?
So both my Instagrams, one is called ZionFit1021 and the other one is my apparel page, ZFit1021 Apparel. So I've always had the idea of teaching. Back in Jamaica, I taught in high school for a few months, almost to a year before I left Jamaica for the United States. So I've always had that teacher mentality where everything I know, I feel like it's very important that somebody else should know. So I've always gone for information to share it. And my Instagram, post-cancer, before cancer, my Instagram page was private, trying to control the traffic on my page.
Right.
Now, after cancer, I realized there's a lot of people who had no clue what acute myeloid leukemia was. And I feel like people needed to know, because everybody knows about breast cancer. Very well promoted, very well, edified, put out there. So I figured, why not teach the people? So I put my profile public, and then I spoke about my victory and recovery over cancer and how it was made possible. And then I realized the followers and the questions started coming in. At one point in time, I was like, wow, did I do the wrong thing here? Because my followers moved from about 450. Now I have close to 1,400 or something followers.
Yeah.
People who really want to learn. So I've got multiple questions. I've received multiple questions of, what is leukemia? How was your recovery? What was your nutrition like? What was your diet like? And all those things. So with me right now, I finally got the motivation to put out my brand of fitness, Zion Fit 1021, which Zion in the Christian Rastafari realm, it speaks about the heights of spirituality. Spoke about heaven. And of course, the fitness, so putting that together is the heights of fitness with spiritual, mental, and physical connectivity. And the 1021 stems from the October 21st was when I actually got the news that I beat cancer and I was in full remission.
Oh, wow.
And the main message of Zion Fit is fit for life. And it's fitness for life for everybody. You're a 2-year-old, you're a 4-year-old, you're 96, everybody. You're pregnant, you're not pregnant. As you've seen on my Instagram, right. I'm training my queen, keeping her in the mix of things, because she's also one of the people interested in health and fitness. And on my Zion Fit 1021 page is a hashtag called Ask Them. These are the few people who have allowed me to put them public on my Instagram as to the people that I've worked with and have seen results. And as I spoke multiple times, I'm not the best and I don't know everything, but if I pay attention enough to each client or each patient or each friend, I know what can work for them. And I work within their means. I do not like to say I'm a trainer, because I've had my cons more than pros about what the title trainer embodies. So I see myself more as a coach, because I teach you so you can teach yourself and teach others. And being vegan, the Zion Fit 1021 apparel is a cruelty-free creation. None of the fabric is made from animals or no silk, no velvet, none of that. Is straight either cotton, or it's either like polyester. And if there's something that's leather, it's man-made leather.
Right.
So I try to keep everything within my principles of life. So that's what I'm currently working on, in making sure that getting certifications to that way, because people really don't listen to you without certifications, to be honest. They don't listen to you without a title beside your name. And I'm trying to make sure that whatever I'm doing, I do it the proper way. I do it with all the right credentials, for so to speak. So that way I can use my means of motivation to continue feeding my family.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And again, I've scribbled about 1,000 notes as you were speaking. The first is, of course, I will be linking to all of your social media platforms on the episode so people can easily find you. The second is understanding about what you said before about kind of flipping from the private side to the public side. And believing in yourself, that you had a mission to share, but not just to share, that people out there, complete strangers, would find you organically or share with people that they thought might benefit. And I think that's also kind of the theme of this podcast as well, is giving anybody a platform to share any kind of message that they had, because there is probably somebody out there who's going through something similar or has been struggling with something, and then you come along and say something, and there's like a nugget of information that they pull from, and that completely changes the course of who they are going forward. So I'm so grateful that you made that decision to make yourself a public entity online. I also made a note here too about that discussion about trainer versus coach, and then becoming certified and credentialed in what you feel like you want to pursue, which I also believe is very important. And I recently interviewed my friend Diana, who works in publishing, and we were talking about celebrity status, people who are getting paid to promote the detox teas, the diets and the fads and things like that, but they're getting such a following just merely because they are deemed celebrity, of whatever that means, however they got there. But we're really the celebrities, the people who put in the work and do the pursuits of following our professional degrees and certifications and becoming credentialed, because we know the right from wrong, where other people, I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of everybody out there doing these things, but I don't think a lot goes into what they're pursuing, other than maybe it's driven by money perhaps, or fame. And so how do you feel? Have you seen any, or do you kind of like stay in your lane in that way? Have you seen anything that you're seeing out there on the internet, on social media platforms, that you disagree with? And if so, do you feel like you have to take it upon yourself to shut it down, or say something, or, correct it in that way?
There's a lot that I've seen that I've, respectfully approached people, about it. And two of the main things are, one, I'm not a fan of the word veganism, because the logics of it is, we're not trying to convert people. We're not trying to make you feel bad for, eating something that had honey in it. We're not trying to make you feel like you've done the worst if you had the craving as a pregnant mother, or even as a man just transitioning and being vegan. It's not a sin, it's not a crime. So one of my philosophies is being vegan. It's not a religion, it's a lifestyle.
Okay.
And the next thing I speak out a lot about on my social media are celebrities who take being vegan as a trend.
Yeah.
So now when you trend being vegan, you're basically telling everybody else being vegan is not a lifestyle, it's a diet. No, that's where you're wrong. So I've messaged a couple of celebrities, and of course they're not going to respond. They really don't set time to respond. I call, the smaller people to them.
Right.
So I've tried to edify people a lot. As soon as I see something that might develop into something else, I say, oh, no. I'm going to help this person understand this is not what this is about. And then the next thing I've addressed a lot are vegans who throw being vegan in people's faces, like walk around telling people, oh, that you're eating is this and is this and a third. You don't know people's lifestyle. You don't know what people are going through. You don't know if they're living in a food desert. You don't know what their income is or isn't. So there's no need for you to bring it out there to let people feel inferior,
right?
Or feel a fear of dying because you're eating something that is already dead. So you have to understand that. And those are the two main things I've had to approach and in some sense attack, because it's becoming a growing concern and people feel like being vegan is a bully kind of a behavior, or scaring people with science. And I do not believe in that, because I was once that person dabbling in fish and chicken, irrespective of the fact that it gave me a headache and made me throw up. And even post-cancer, when they told me I had to start eating meat to rebuild my body, I came out of chemotherapy 141 pounds, skin and bones, and on a plant-based diet. And I say plant-based because I was ingesting honey. Didn't know that, ingesting honey is not vegan.
Right.
So I was doing that, and I gained 26 pounds of not eating anything animal-based, for so to speak. So you have to first, I tell people as vegans, do not bother people if they don't bother you. If nobody wants to ask you anything, Let them stay in their own lane, because you can't, don't go out there preaching. As I said, it's not a religion. Yeah. But I've had to address a lot of things, how vegans represent being vegan, and how celebrities misinform people about what being vegan means.
Yes. Yeah. And I really love that message. I've shared this before on the podcast that I teach undergrad and graduate courses at Lehman College as well. And a lot, especially now, we're in listen, the last 400 years, we've been in the midst of racial discussions and so on. But I really do try to incorporate and include a lot of these uncomfortable but necessary discussions in our classes, because a lot of the undergrads, especially, they're coming kind of with the malleable brains. They're very new to this whole nutrition world. They're reading their own studies. They're looking at different documentaries, and they're developing their own sense of what's right and what's wrong. But I challenge them a lot of times, where are we walking in with an agenda? Are we being respectful and sensitive to other people's everything, not just race, but, socioeconomic status, accessibility, and, security, and so on. And making sure that, like you said, focusing on your mission and your mission alone, trying to do the best you can with what you have, moving forward in the direction where organically people will find you, and not spending too much energy. While yes, we might want to kind of say, actually, that's not correct. If I can step in and just say, this concerns me a little bit, I'm afraid you're giving out the wrong information, but not spending so much of our time and energy when we have a mission to continue, that we revert and go back and make it our job to sit there and, berate people and smack them down in a public forum like the social media world can be. I feel like that does nobody any good. And people will find their own way. Am I right? Like, empires will crumble, and that will happen. And those of us who remaining can continue on with our message and again, hopefully come out kind of the victors in that way, the winners in that way. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Yes, most definitely. Oh, and the one thing I forgot to tell you, I also tell vegans to just have a sense of humor. Yes. Don't get agitated and angry for everything you see out there. Trust me, you need to have a sense of humor as being vegan, and you need to have a lot of knowledge. So anybody who wants to be vegan, for so to speak, I've always tell them, please know for yourself. And while you're learning, have a sense of humor. And I'm reading this book called The Essentials Sports Nutrition. And I'll tell you, Dina, some things I'm seeing in this book, I'm like, are you really telling people to eat that still? But I have to understand that not everybody is Maurice, and not everybody is being vegan.
Right.
Athletes who consume meat, they also need to understand the portions they need to eat and not overeat. So you got to have a sense of humor, have a sense of respectability to people, and just don't force people into what you believe, into what you stand for.
Right.
If it will happen, it will come full circle.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, that's a very good point too. Taking things with a grain of salt, with an open mind, understanding that sometimes textbooks and research articles and all these things that, they were written a handful of years ago, things change. As we learn better, we do better, hopefully. Or, you make your own decisions, and these are your own personal tenets and beliefs. And if you feel strongly about them, then you'll continue amassing other people and other resources around you that help support you in that mission going forward. So Maurice, as we are kind of on our way to winding down this discussion, I want to find out from you, what does the future you look like? What are you pursuing? What do you hope to see for yourself in the next handful of years to come?
So my future entails this. I will become a certified strength and conditioning coach. Also, my certification for animal flow, which is a form of training that mimics the movements of animals. You can use it for strength, conditioning, mobility, injury recovery, injury prevention. I'm just trying ways of getting people out of the typical commercial box gyms and getting into their environment. So everything I'm trying to learn is about being functional, so that way you can do my training. Because as you've seen, I've been training in gyms, I've trained outside, and I've trained in the comfort of my living room space.
Yes.
So, and that's what knowledge does for you. It teaches you to not be restricted and to not be confined, but you can do almost anything anywhere. So for me, the next couple of years, I will be continuing to working on that with some of my mentors, Diego, who you probably known Diego. He also a student of Lehman College. He was my college soccer teammate, and he's was also one of my coaches as well. And my other mentor is Alexa Batista. She's amazing. She's really amazing. So I just gave her a shout out yesterday on my page. So I will be
Oh.
continuing to work with these people and more, doing more research and working with another philosophy of Zion Fit. Research it, retain it, rehearse it, and repeat it. And you can never go wrong. So that's what I'm going for the next couple of years. Because as I said, I'm trying to step away from the typical 9 to 5 in creating more flexibility for my family and how we full joy life and
Mm-hmm.
how we spend time with each other, and also getting into fully taking over ZFit 1021 apparel, where
Mm-hmm.
I do my own printing, because all these messages you see on these shirts and everything, they're all authentic. And look out for my post later on. This shirt is going to be pretty much fun. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking to creating and maintaining life on my own terms for my family and I. Take vacations whenever we want and create that luxury of time. Because, as I said, my daughter is on the way, and she's due to arrive in November. And I'm not sure when this pandemic is going to be over, but I want to make sure that everything goes according to plan with flexibility. Just as my training programs are, just as my life is. There's I call it structural flexibility.
I love that. I mean, you really do practice what you preach. Well, can we talk about what a day in the life of you is right now? Like, what kind of routines? I always ask people what their non-negotiables are. Like, what do you absolutely want, make sure happens no matter what happens for the rest of the day? Do you have some sort of morning, evening routines, and what's going on as far as just like your schedule right now?
My schedule right now, I get up, have a juice, usually some berries with a papaya or a banana, having some sort of fat or protein to help control my hunger as I train,
Mm-hmm.
and train for about 2 or 3 hours, depending if it's strength training day or conditioning day. And then I'm off to work after that. But the main thing about my day is getting up and creating that state of mind to carry me out through the rest of the day. Because my job, I also do operations at Home Depot, and that job can be pretty hectic,
Yeah.
especially this pandemic where people are not trying to come to the store. They're ordering everything online, literally
Right.
a 7-cent screw online, paying
Right.
$9 for delivery. So these are things that we have to deal with. So having a positive and strong mindset is very, very integral to how you start your day. And if I don't train and go to work, the day might be different. So I need to train. Everything needs to be in alignment before I hit the streets. So yeah, so that's what my day looks like. But at the optimal is my mental space. That needs to be fully ready before I go outside, even on public transportation.
Right, because then whatever happens, you will know you will be able to react to in a specific way because you are in control of what's going on inside as well, like your mindset as well. Um,
Precisely.
so, Maurice, is there anything that I didn't maybe get to ask you that you've been wanting to share with anybody out there? I always tell my guests, keep in mind somebody that you think might benefit from your discussion with me. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you think you wanted to add?
I think we definitely covered a lot, but I just want to really encourage people, use your social media pages wisely.
Mm,
Especially for Instagram, use these things as a teaching platform. And this pandemic, do not see it as something that's robbing you of your regular 9 to 5, but
mm,
try to see within yourself, what is it that you're really able to do for yourself in creating an income out of it. And as often as you do so, remember, it's not about the paper, it's about the process, and it's about the purpose. How can you serve? Because back in the days, it was never about money. It's about barter system. What can you do to help me that I can also do to help you?
right.
Trading trades. So use your social media pages wisely. And as often as you do so, it's about the purpose and not about the paper.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I often say to when I was first kind of starting to figure out what I wanted my business to be, I went and volunteered throughout the community. I did a lot of free things for different community centers. I also offered free services for nutrition counseling at different housing projects because I often said, I don't feel comfortable asking people for their money until I've proven that I can be of service to my neighborhood, my community. And then even in those situations, if only one person took my business card, but I met with the 12 people, that was still 12 people that I got to talk to and to share information and learn about their lives and then help me grow as a patron of society as well. So I love that message as well. Like, you have the ability to really, in the social media world, meet strangers.
Yes.
And have them guide you and you guide them as well. I love that. Okay, so obviously we know that you have a public social media platform, which I will share on this episode. And my last and final question to you is, pun intended, of course, what is on your plate today? So are you doing anything as far as personal and professional projects? Of course, we want to know about that stuff too, but then I need to know what you're going to eat later.
So for breakfast, if on my non-training days, which this is probably another episode, on my non-training days, I have warm lemon water to start my day. And then with seeds, has to have seeds. And then I have oatmeal. I tend to use either coconut milk or cashew almond milk. Gives me about 10 grams of protein. Cashew almond milk. Coconut milk gives me my vitamin B12. And I have that with oats, rolled oats, rolled oats. And I have pumpkin seeds, 2 scoops of sunflower butter, giving my sweet tooth, some agave, and that's very well seasoned with, and I say seasoned,
yes,
with cinnamon and vanilla and some chia seeds for my healthy fats. So that's what's on my plate for the day. And for lunch, my queen made some vegan mac and cheese, and I'm going to enjoy every bite of it. And then around 7 o'clock, I had myself set up with a juice, not a smoothie. Don't feel like having milk that time of the night. Yeah. So I'm having a juice later on, mango, papaya, and bananas. And with some sea moss. That's my go-to thing. I love it. And then that concludes my day. And then I leave work at 10. I come home, drink some warm lemon water, and I'm off to bed.
That's fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for sharing your life with us, your life story, all of the inspiration that you have for everybody as well. I'm very honored to have been at the right place at the right time to meet you and to have continued on this journey with you. And I cannot wait to see where the rest of your future and goes. I'm so excited to see you be so much more successful than you already are. Maurice, thank you so much for spending time with me today. And
thank you too. Thank you for this platform, for sharing my experience with people. I'm really grateful for it.
Thank you so much for joining me this week on the Dish with Dina podcast. I am Dina D'Alessandro, registered dietitian, nutritionist, founder, and chief executive life changer at Dish with Dina, and I'm also your host. If you like what you heard, I would be so grateful if you could subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share this with others who you think might benefit from what we have to offer on these episodes. You can also join my mailing list at dishwithdina.com or email me at info@dishwithdina.com with questions, comments, feedback, and if you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, because everybody eats and we all have a story to share. I hope you tune back in next week when we dish again.